Spring training begins in 2 weeks. Here's a list of the players we'll be inviting to camp.
I never heard of half of these guys, and the ones I do know are way past their prime.
Most of these guys never had a prime.
This guy here is dead.
Cross him off, then.
Hi, guys, and welcome to another episode of Hollywood Gold. I'm your host, Daniela Taplin Lundberg. I'm here with my right hand, Bex Camerata, officially Bex. And I'm here with like an integral part of our team who is going to sort of fan out on this movie. He's been begging us to do this movie since we started. Josh Kolodny, the heart and soul of this pod, our sound editor. How are you, Josh?
I'm good. Thank you for having me on. I've never actually seen this recorded live before.
Oh, really?
I'm always editing
I guess that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
You just have to hear our voices.
Yeah.
And make us sound good and smart.
I got to say, this is surreal because growing up in Cleveland, Ohio, you see this movie at like 6 years old.
Yes.
And it's just like a rite of passage.
Yes.
And the fact that I'm now here on a podcast editing it.
Yes.
And your dad of all people wrote and directed it. I feel like I'm in a simulation.
Yes, you announced the movie before we even announced it. Major League is today's episode. I'm so excited, you guys. And Josh is so excited. And Bex is now so excited because now she's seen it. So my stepdad wrote and directed this when I was about 12 years old. I grew up watching the Cleveland Indians lose. Yeah. And my dad would pace around the office just swearing and being so PO'd. And I think that's what inspired him to write this movie and ultimately direct it. Okay, so we're going to jump right in. I'm so excited about this episode because it brings back so many memories. And as you know, loyal listeners, it's one of the reasons I got into the business. And Bex is a new fan, so we can talk about the nostalgia of it and also being reminded of how much we love a sports movie. So let's get going. David Ward, the esteemed writer-director and also my dad. I'm so excited to be talking to you. The first episode I did of this, I mentioned Major League and the time I spent with you on set in Milwaukee and how it deeply affected me and my desire to make movies.
Well, thank you.
I've recently rewatched the movie, which holds up so incredibly well. It's still as funny as it ever was. I want you to take me back, and we're just going to focus entirely on the movie and like the sort of arc of the film, where it started, where the idea came from, how you started writing it, because you are responsible for writing and directing and creating this franchise, which was incredibly successful. So take me back to the moment that you came up with the idea.
Well, I was casting about for my next idea, as writers always are. Mm-hmm. And I thought about, for some reason, I thought about the Cleveland Indians because I grew up in Cleveland and I've always been a Cleveland Indians fan. They're now called the Cleveland Guardians. They're not called the Indians anymore. But And I thought about the fact that they hadn't finished within 10 games of first place for 40 years. That's how bad this team was.
I just want to interject, Dad, that I remember sitting with you in your office often watching games and watching them lose, and you would get so mad.
Yeah, it
so
was,
continue.
It's a thankless task being a fan of almost any Cleveland sports team. The Browns have been almost as inept, but the Indians were really bad for a long, long time. And they have a very enthusiastic fan base despite all of the problems.
Yeah.
It was always frustrating to see how much they cared and how little they got back in return. So I thought the only way the Cleveland Indians will probably win anything in my lifetime is if I make a movie where they do. So I thought, but it's got to be a comedy because nobody's going to believe it. It's a dramatic movie. So I decided, okay, what if they put together, they just cleaned house and put together this team of complete non-entities and never were's.
Yeah.
And somehow this team found a way to come together, and despite their owner wanting to move the team to Miami, which, it seems like something I made up out of nowhere. But at that time, Calvin Griffith was the owner's name.
Yeah.
And he wanted to move the Minnesota Twins.
The notion was out there. This was a concept.
Yeah. This was a real possibility in the actual baseball world. So anyway, I thought, okay, we got the owner. So she's going to put together the group of the worst players she can find so that people would just not come out and watch them, and attendance would fall below the established minimum, and she would be able to move the team legally.
Are you writing this on spec? Like, are you just writing this on your own, or are you trying to get someone to pay you to write it?
I just decided to write it on my own. Yeah, I just went and wrote it, and it was fun. I mean, I just got to create these characters. All the characters were based on real baseball players or combinations of real baseball players.
Yeah, tell me about that.
Not so much their actual lives, but sort of the characteristics that they were known for. For example, Wild Thing was based on Ryan Duran, and Ryan Duran used to wear these Coke bottle glasses, and he hit the ball like 100 miles an hour, but he never knew where it was going. I mean, he would, he would be warming up before the game and throwing the ball to the backstop 10 feet over the catcher's head, and the hitters on the other team were going, is this guy, can he see well enough to know where I am when I'm up at the plate?
Totally. Oh my God, that's amazing. Okay, what else? Who else did you draw inspiration from?
Willie Mays Hayes, obviously his name says it. Willie Mays was, but Willie Mays Hayes is a character who's a big wannabe. He's a big run hitter, but he hits pop-ups. He can't hit home runs. So his real name is Willie Hayes, but he calls himself Willie Mays Hayes.
What's the line? What's the line? I run like Mays and I run like Hayes.
I hit like Mays and I run like Hayes. But Hayes being Bob Hayes, who was a sprinter for the U.S. Olympic team, who won the Olympics and then went on to play pro football for the Dallas Cowboys.
Oh my God, I never got that reference. See, you are such an insider sports guy that like all this went over my head. I mean, I will quote that all the time, but I was like, what is Hayes? Okay, now
Hayes,
I get it.
Yeah, Bob Hayes, if you look him up, he's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, but he also won the Olympic gold medal in the 100-meter dash.
Okay.
For a time, he was the fastest man in the world.
Okay, got it.
Willie Mays Hayes being a little higher on himself than the rest of the world is.
I mean, you launched Wesley Snipes. I mean, we will get to that. But
we launched a couple people actually, but
we'll get to that. But keep going with the inspiration.
So then we had Serrano was kind of based on the Alou brothers. The Alou brothers were, I'm not sure that they were necessarily into voodoo, but they had some strange locker room practices that they went through before games that might have involved something like that. So I just said, I'm going to make this guy a voodoo guy, give him this voodoo doll, Joe Boo. And, the Chelsea Ross character, Eddie Harris, shouldn't take his run.
Right.
He was religious, so he thought this whole voodoo thing was really beyond.
Let's not start a holy war here. That's another one of the great lines.
You really do know the movie.
Yeah.
And Corbin, Roger Dorn, at that time, it was the beginning of real free agency, and you had these free agents who wanted these big contracts, and they wanted things written into their contracts that they didn't have to do. And so we were sending that up a little bit, with Dorn being such a
totally pretty boy,
pretty boy, full of himself, who's actually over the hill, but totally. Don't tell him that. And Lou Brown, the manager, I wanted someone who was an old school kind of tough guy, and the only person I could think of was James Gammon. I wrote it for James Gammon. If I hadn't gotten James Gammon,
who the hell would have played it? Yeah.
I would have been devastated. I wouldn't have known who to cast. But I knew James a little bit, and when we got him, that was just big score.
And Berenger's role, was he just like, he was meant to be sort of the backbone of the
Berenger's role, he was sort of based on Steve Yeager, the catcher for the Dodgers. And Steve Yeager became one of our consultants on Major League Two. And he was there on Major League One as well. He was the third base coach.
Oh, right.
Third base coach. But Berenger was based on Yeager toward the end of his career, and a lot of different catchers who had knee problems because you're always squatting and jumping out of that position to make throws and do other things.
Oh my God,
And you
murder.
want, years of that takes its toll on your knees.
So, Dad, you're writing the script. You kind of get it in shape. When you decided to use the Cleveland Indians and the Yankees, were you like nervous about ultimately getting permission to use those teams?
We had to get permission from Major League Baseball. And I thought the Yankees would be, George Steinbrenner owned the Yankees at the time. I didn't think he would ever agree to being the villains in a movie. But he did.
Oh my God.
I was just stunned. And it turned out that he was from Cleveland.
No.
And yes, he was from Cleveland. And actually, after the Yankees, he was a kind of an Indians fan.
That is so
Which is weird
funny.
because the Indians finished, second to the Yankees like 15 times.
So, Dad, but you didn't get permission until you were like into the progress of production, or did
No,
you?
we had to get permission before we even started shooting. Well, once we were at Morgan Creek, then we got the permission to do it. Morgan Creek, at the same time they were negotiating our deal with them, they wanted to make sure that this was okay with Major League.
Okay.
And Major League was incredibly cooperative, and we thought of sending them a script without all of the bad language in it.
Right.
But at the time, baseball was going through kind of a down period.
Uh-huh.
And they were really hungry for a movie about baseball.
Right. A little bit of a pop.
Yeah. And they were on board, and we were really quite shocked. We thought we would have to probably make changes in the script and take out a lot of the language. And
yeah.
Well,
that's incredible. That's incredible. Okay. So just stepping back for a second, you finished the script. Do you send it out? Like at that time, my memory is you were repped at either ICM or CAA.
I was repped at CAA.
Did your agents just send it to the market and see who responded? Like, how did you get Morgan Creek on board?
My agents were Rosalie Swedlin and John Levin.
Yes.
Rosalie and John got the script to Joe Roth.
Oh.
Joe Roth at the time was in partnership with Jim Robinson at Morgan Creek.
Okay.
And Joe Roth, he came up with an idea that I never even thought of. He said, well, this would be a great way to reteam Tom Berenger and Charlie Sheen. And I thought, yeah.
Oh my God, Dad. I did not know that. I did not know that.
I just thought, wow, that's great. I know Charlie loves to play ball. I didn't know anything about whether Tom was into baseball or not.
But you knew Charlie could pitch. He pitched in high school, right?
Oh, I knew Charlie could pitch.
Yeah.
I didn't know Charlie well at that point. So I flew back to South Carolina, where Tom was living at the time, Beaufort.
Okay.
And I went to interview him, but I also went to see if he could play baseball. Because as a catcher, you have to be able to throw.
Yeah.
We played some catch, and Tom didn't have a great arm. He could hit the ball, and he liked baseball, but it wasn't his favorite sport. He was more into football. But I realized that he's going to be playing catcher. He's going to have a mask on.
Ooh.
So the throwing can be done by Yeager, who had one of the greatest arms ever in baseball.
I love it. I love it. This is the stuff I love.
So,
okay. Yeah.
So I said, this is going to work. This is going to work. Because what Tom is playing is the grizzled veteran. He's the only one on the team who isn't a complete, a complete crazy person.
Yeah.
And he sort of holds the team together, and he holds the ensemble together.
So you went for Tom first.
Went for Tom, and actually almost simultaneously with Charlie.
Okay.
And Charlie was oh God, he loved it. He loved the idea of playing Wild Thing and being the pitcher. And
you had like confidence that they could be funny?
Well, that's the thing. I've done a lot of comedies, but I've never done comedies with comedians, except maybe, Kelsey and Down Periscope. But, he's an actor too. He's not a stand-up guy.
Right.
Because I wanted it to feel like authentic baseball. So I didn't want to just fill it up with a bunch of comedians because there's some serious stuff in it, not deeps, we're not Oppenheimer here.
Yeah,
but there's a romance, and there's also some times when they're just being regular guys. And I didn't want people who had really been stand-up comedians in it. I wanted actors.
And it was all in the writing. If you said the line straight, it would play. That's the beauty. The script is so sharp and people still quote it today. So I totally get that.
Yeah. I mean, I just wanted it to be, I just felt it would have a more authentic feel, even though it's comic construction.
Say, hey, how you doing? Willie Mays Hayes here.
Jake Taylor here. Rick Vaughn.
What the hell league you been playing in?
California Penal.
Never heard of it. Well, how'd you end up playing there?
Stole a car.
Wouldn't leave a rum sitting around out here with this group.
It's very bad to steal Joe Boo's rum.
Who's your casting agent, by the way?
Joanne Zalewski. Joanne, she did a great job, and because I had told her for Serrano, I wanted him to be kind of big and scary, so that when he walked on screen, the other players were a little like, we don't mess with this guy. Brought Dennis in, and he had this great deep voice. And that's what won me over, was the deep voice. And I said to him, Dennis, you're going to have to shave your head. And he said, really? Do I have to shave my head? And I said, yeah. I said, oh my God, I finally get a part and I have to shave my head so that nobody will ever recognize me when I have hair. I said, sorry, Dennis.
God, it's the vision. It's the vision.
That's my vision for this character, is the shaved head. He's just, it's just scarier.
Tell me about the casting of Wesley, because I think it's one of your great talents too, is just finding these gems.
Well, Wesley came in and he had never played baseball. He was a dancer.
Oh.
Been in some shows on Broadway, I believe, not in starring roles, but he was a dancer. And I said, well, Wes, you don't know how to play baseball. And he said, well, I'll learn. And then I said, well, I don't know about that. But so I read him, and he was just hilarious. He was hilarious, Willie Mays Hayes. He so got the character.
So funny.
He so completely got the character that I thought, okay, he can't play baseball. But what we did was we had a 2-week boot camp before we started shooting.
Okay.
Where Steve Yeager got everybody in shape so that they didn't get injured, because you can injure yourself playing baseball. If you're not in great shape, the fast stops and starts, you can get Charlie horses, you can pull
your knees blow. Yeah,
and then
totally.
then you can't do anything for a week. So he got everybody in shape. They went through batting practice, infield practice, the whole thing. And he came to me and he said, this kid, Wesley Snipes, is one of the best natural athletes I've ever seen.
Wow.
He's never played baseball, and I'm trying to get him to hit pop-ups.
Yeah.
And he can do it.
Oh my God.
He can do it. And hitting pop-ups on purpose
is hard.
Is one of the hardest things to do, because you have to not only hit the ball, you have to hit the bottom of the ball.
Right.
You have to hit the bottom of the ball so it spins off.
Yeah.
And we didn't have any CGI on those pop-ups at all.
Oh
he was
my
hitting
God,
all
Dad.
those pop-ups.
I love it.
I was just amazed. And the catch he makes, when he goes up, he makes this great catch over the wall, and he made that catch. Now, it wasn't a batted ball. It was a ball that was thrown by Yeager. He was throwing the ball so that we could get a certain point just over the wall, because he couldn't leap 6 feet high and catch it. But
yeah. Oh my God. That's so amazing.
the one thing, though, that's funny, we shot most of his stealing bases in slow motion. So you didn't know how fast he really was or not. He wasn't very fast. He learned to do all these other things, but he didn't run that fast.
That is
he was
so
a very
funny.
muscular guy.
Yeah.
I mean, if you've seen Wesley with his shirt off,
Stacking.
and he
He's
didn't
amazing.
weights
Yeah.
or anything. It's like unbelievable.
Yeah.
but he wasn't that fast.
So thank God for the slow-mo. It looks incredibly fast. It was like real sleight of hand.
Yeah, how would you know?
Talk to me about Rene Russo, because you would bring home these VHS tapes. And I remember watching the chemistry tape between Berenger and Rene, and like Berenger in the moment being like, well, she's amazing. You know, they had that scene where she's saying, whatever, I'm going to get married and da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
So talk to me about her.
Well, I had read her on Cannery Row.
Oh.
She was very raw at the time, but she had this quality that you just liked her. You just wanted to, you wanted to watch her. You wanted to root for her. You just felt like this is a really genuinely sweet and lovely person who can also be funny.
Yeah.
But when she came in for her interview for Major League, she was so nervous that she basically stood in a corner. You know, most people, when they read, you know, they stand up, they walk around. She stood in a corner.
It was not a dazzling performance.
It was not in the top 10.
Okay.
But her quality in terms of just when she read the lines and when she did it, I just love her. And I think she's going to be great with Berenger.
Yes.
So I took a real chance there. And I think Joanne was like, yeah, she has a lovely quality, Dave. I don't know if she can handle all of the acting, because she was better than she was on Cannery Row, but she came out of the modeling world. She was a supermodel.
Okay. I didn't realize that.
She was Cindy Crawford before Cindy Crawford was Cindy Crawford. So,
okay.
So I thought, okay, well, let's put she and Berenger together and see what happens. And it was just great. And Tom was really great about it. He was very helpful with her, and he got her to settle down. The only problem we had with her was she's Italian. And when she gets going, there's a lot of the hands, a lot of the talking with the hands, you know, and they would be flying across her face and stuff.
Right. Put your hands down.
The first scene we shot with her was the scene in the restaurant.
Yes.
Where Berenger sees her from up where they're having dinner. And
I was there. We were there. That's the day we arrived. Me, Sil, and Joaquin. Yeah.
That's the line where, you know, he sees her having dinner with this guy. Who is that guy? And Charlie said, you want me to beat the shit out of him? To beat the crap out of him or whatever? Totally. And so he goes down, and that first scene, and she was, the hands were doing. I said, Rene, you got to keep the hands down. And finally, what I did was I tied them down.
No, you didn't, Dad.
I tied them down for the first take, and she said, okay, I think I got it now. And then I untied them, and she was fine. And she, you know, every once in a while, I'd have to remind her again, hands.
It's in the frame. We got the hands in the frame.
In the frame, cross your face, you know, doing wipes, so cross your face.
Okay, so Dad, backing up a bit, because we raced through prep and you did have like a phenomenal crew. Why did you decide to shoot in Milwaukee as opposed to Cleveland? Like, how did that decision happen?
Well, first of all, Cleveland was a union town. A very big Teamster union town, and Milwaukee wasn't. So we saved money there. But also the Browns, Cleveland Stadium, where the Indians played, it was later in the summer when we shot, and the Browns had already started practicing. So there were days when there were football lines on the field.
Oh, okay.
And we couldn't have that. And we couldn't ask them to keep changing the lines back and forth. So we went to Milwaukee because the architect who built in and designed Cleveland Municipal Stadium also designed Milwaukee County Stadium.
Okay.
And so it looked the most like Cleveland Municipal of any of the other stadiums at the time.
Okay.
We still had to do a lot of dressing. You know, we had to put the blue pads on the outfield walls to make it look like a municipal stadium.
Did you shoot any exteriors in Cleveland? Like, did you go in for like a day or two?
We shot for a week in Cleveland for the whole title sequence.
Which is so great.
Including the nun, who was a huge Indians fan and would take, she would bake cookies for the Indians and take them to the actual team. And they once a week, they waited anxiously for her to show up with her cookies. They loved her cookies.
That is so amazing.
She was one of those diehard Cleveland fans. She'd been in Cleveland for, gosh, I guess 50 years and never saw them win anything.
My memory, it was a shoot that went relatively smoothly. Does that feel true?
It did with the actors, but it was very tough. It was the hottest summer in Milwaukee in 75 years.
Oh, wow.
And the scene in the locker room where they're looking inside their lockers to see if they got a red tag or not, we shot that at night in the basement of a high school. And there were no windows or anything.
Oh.
It was 93 degrees in the middle of the night. It was ridiculous.
Oh, my God.
Berenger, in his part of the scene, we were a low-budget movie, so we only had 2 uniforms for him.
Okay, it wasn't like you had tons.
So he would sweat through one, and he'd have to take it off. We'd bring in the other one, which we dried with a hairdryer between takes, which didn't help that much because now that one was hot from the hairdryer. So we put that one on. And
oh, my God.
It was just like, that was a physically difficult scene for everybody because it was just, the weather was just so difficult.
Talk to me about the Uecker of it all.
Oh, Uecker, yeah.
The heart of his voice and like commentating.
When I wrote the character of Harry Doyle, I always had Uecker in mind because I'd seen all the commercials he'd done for Miller Lite, and they were hilarious. And, he was on Mr. Belvedere, and he was very, very funny. So I got in touch with him, and as it turns out, he's the Milwaukee Brewers play-by-play announcer.
Unbelievable. You didn't know that.
I did not know that until we got to Milwaukee. And I just thought, this is meant to be.
Yeah.
He's right here.
Oh, my God.
The only problem that we had with shooting him was when the Brewers went out of town, we couldn't shoot with him because he was their announcer.
Right.
He was calling the games.
Oh, my God.
He was their play-by-play announcer. He was their Vince Scully. He still is.
No.
And he used to pitch batting practice for them.
What?
Yeah.
So was he a baseball player? Like he was
Yeah, he was a catcher in the major leagues.
Oh my God.
The big joke about him was that he was a terrible hitter. And he never hit above like 200.
I really didn't know any of that. All I knew is he's like one of the most quotable people and like the most believable commentator like ever on film.
I go to him and I said, "Do you want to play Harry Doyle?" And he read and he said, "I'd love to play Harry Doyle. This is really going to be fun." What was great about him was he did all the lines that were written, but sometimes I would say to him, what would you say here if you could? So every once in a while, he contributed a line that was hilarious.
Did you write just a bit outside or did he throw that in?
I wrote just a bit outside.
Just a bit outside.
I did.
Yeah.
I did. But there's some other lines.
Yeah.
There's some other lines. And it's hard to remember which is which because when you're working with somebody, you're just like, okay, that's good. Let's try this one. Let's try that one. And so some were his and some were mine. But he was great to work with, just a really nice guy. And, he was used to shooting the way you shoot television and movies. He was used to doing more than one take. He was used to do resets on things. And sometimes when you're using real people, when I was using real announcers on the program, they got a little, how long is this going to take?
Right. And he knew the drill.
He didn't. He loved baseball. He loved doing the stuff.
And did you shoot him actually observing the plays?
No, he had to imagine that it was going on. There are a couple shots where I'm shooting behind him and you see a play happen, you see something happen, and yeah, at that point he's watching it. But at the other points, no. I just would tell him, okay, this is what's happened, and the ball 4, ball 8,
yeah,
the ball,
totally. Oh,
so he was so great, and he's so memorable in the movie, and he has so many lines that people repeat.
So the Tribe drops its third straight on this trip, 6-1 to the Rangers.
For the Indians, 1 run on, let's see, 1 hit
That's all? We got one goddamn hit?
You can't say goddamn on the air.
Don't worry, nobody's listening anyway.
Well, then I guess there's only one thing left to do.
What's that?
Win the whole fucking thing.
Okay, so you have to retell the story of how you got the 25,000 people into the stadium organically. It's one of the most inspirational producing stories ever.
First of all, there hadn't been a movie shot in Milwaukee in a long time. I think it was 15, 17 years, something like that. So the people there were really, really stoked to have a film production. And we became kind of a social center. And the guys on the grip trucks made martinis every day after we wrapped during the day. And young women from all over the city would come. They loved these guys.
No way. Oh my God, I love it.
So that was one social center. The other social center was we had a group of 400 people, extras, who were not paid, who would show up every day.
No.
They showed up every day, 400 people.
Just to hang out, like in the stadium, or where would they be? Like, what were the scenes?
It would be in the stadium. They came to the stadium to be in the crowd.
Okay.
They got to know the actors, and the actors, they also brought food for the actors. It's just, we had really great catering, but, they bought cake and pies, and
it was just wonderful.
So anyway, we had the night that we wanted to shoot the huge crowd.
For Wild Things, like big moment, which was the greatest moment of all.
Yes.
We have to talk about music at a point.
We did a promotion in Milwaukee where we gave away a car, we gave away some TVs, and a trip to London.
Oh, I didn't realize that there was also a trip to London. Okay, amazing.
A trip to London, yes.
Okay.
Which, frankly, I don't think anybody in Milwaukee cared about that much. This is not against the people in Milwaukee.
That's Hollywood. They're like, we don't care.
It wasn't, people weren't responding to that. They wanted to come. And we said, as extras, you'll be in the movie and we're going to sing Wild Thing.
That amazing version of Wild Thing.
So we didn't know how many people would show up.
Okay.
And we had, between shots, we had local comedians entertaining the crowd. And I remember I came out, it was a couple hours before shooting, and there was nobody there.
Oh, no.
And then all of a sudden they started to trickle in. About an hour in, there were like maybe, 5,000.
Okay.
And I thought, well, okay, we'll just
have to make it work.
Figure out how to shoot this.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, with about a half an hour to go, they just came in droves.
Oh my God.
They just came, and everybody, and Ray, they were coming down from the top. They were coming up from the bottom. They were coming. Oh my God. And it was like ants coming out of an anthill. It was, and Ray Villalobos pointed and said, Dave, look at this. Because I was looking at my script and I'm trying to figure out how to shoot with this number of people I got.
Yeah.
He pointed out and he said, here they come.
Oh my God.
And they kept coming, 27,000 people.
Oh my God. I literally have the chills.
It was the most thrilling thing that's ever happened to me making a movie.
That's incredible.
And so what we did, they were going to be standing the whole time anyway. So we put every other row. So 27,000 looked like 54,000.
Oh my God.
And it just filled everything behind home plate all the way down the first and third base lines, all the way to the outfield. It was remarkable. And I just took all of my notes about how to shoot it,
You could just shoot it for real,
Look,
like literally.
We're going for it.
Yeah.
We're going for it.
Oh my God, Dad.
And I had my list of, there were 12 shots I needed to get. The big things I needed to get were Serrano's home run, watching him run around the bases with the bat, and the whole crowd
going crazy.
Him. I needed Berenger to do his pointing like Babe Ruth did.
Yeah, the Babe Ruth point.
And I needed Charlie coming out of the bullpen.
Yeah.
And then walking into the shot where he goes up onto the mound and you see the whole huge crowd there.
Yeah.
And he goes up on the mound and Berenger and Lou Brown are there. God. And after that shoot, Berenger said, that is the most exciting thing that's ever happened to me on a movie.
Oh my God, Dad.
He said, I have, and I've done 25, 30 movies.
He did The Big Chill. I mean, what are we talking about? He did Platoon.
That I've just never seen. I've never experienced anything like that, a real crowd. Now I know how athletes feel when they're out on when they're out on the field and the crowd is amped.
Oh my God.
And then what we did was we put on the scoreboard, we put the words up to Wild Thing, and we played over the loudspeakers, we played the X version of Wild.
The coolest version.
It sounds like 50,000 people anyway.
But
people were singing along to it. And I said to them, you can dance, you can sing, you can do whatever you want. We have 6 cameras that are roaming around, you might even end up in the movie.
Yeah.
And they just went nuts. They had a great, great time. And then all of these teenage girls came out on top of the dugout.
Yes.
Started dancing. My first thought was, oh my God. First of all, I hope one of them doesn't fall off because I didn't ask them to do that. And the second was, is the roof of the dugout going to hold up? Because they're jumping up and down. They're dancing, jumping up and down.
Oh my God.
And Ray said, forget about it. We're shooting it. I said, yeah, we are. You bet we are. And it was remarkable.
Electric.
They sang, they cheered, and they took direction wonderfully. And they stayed until midnight, which I thought they wouldn't. I thought, once they saw that the actors are just kind of specks down there on the field, that they're so far away, they can't really see or interact with actors, but they felt like they were. They felt like they were in the movie, and they were. They really made the scene. Made that scene, and that scene, I think, made the movie too.
It's one of the great all-time scenes. Yeah.
It was just so wonderful. We didn't have to use cutouts. We didn't have to
Totally. It felt so authentic. You couldn't do that today, Dad. It would just, everything would be CG'd right now. Like that felt like so authentic in a moment in time that you couldn't really recreate it because no one would allow that to happen, and everything would be CG'd. So it's such an inspirational moment. So you get into the edit. The edit comes together nicely, as I recall. The music was such an amazing component. The James Newton Howard, the Randy Newman. I mean, it was just the X song. Music is really one of, I feel, the strengths of the film. And you love music, so that felt very natural to me. But when the edit came together and they were talking about releasing it, it was an R-rated baseball comedy. Was the studio nervous? Talk to me about that.
The studio was a little bit nervous about the R because they said, we're going to lose all these kids.
Yeah.
These young kids who play Little League Baseball. As it turned out, they all figured out ways to do the movie, which I kind of figured they would, having kids who figured out ways to see movies sometimes that they weren't supposed to see.
Oh my God.
These kids are kids. They if they want to see it, they're going to figure out how to do it. Now, some parents did allow their kids to see it, but I got a lot of letters and even phone calls from fathers saying, God, why did you have to have them swear so much? And when we had the screening in Cleveland, Bob Feller, the great Cleveland pitcher, the Hall of Fame pitcher, came up to me and said, the movie was great, but why did they have to swear so much? And I said, because that's the way baseball players talk.
Yeah, totally.
Hey, I know you didn't. I know you're a religious man, and I know you didn't, but they do. This is the way they talk, and I wanted it to feel authentic.
Yes.
The studio was a little worried about it, but we had another thing happen. We previewed the movie, and what you may have forgotten is the way the movie originally ended. You find out that the owner, Rachel Phelps, is actually not a bad person at all. The team was going bankrupt because her husband was such a fool. And She didn't want to move them. She couldn't afford to get really good players. So she personally scouted all of these players in the minor leagues and thought, if I can get a coach that can bring them together, and if I can make them hate me, if they hate me, they will come together, which was George Steinbrenner's whole thing.
Oh my God.
He consciously wanted the players to kind of hate him, to unify around hating him. So we did that ending. And at the end, it's revealed, Lou Brown knew all about it. He finally tells Charlie Cyphers that, that's what it is. And he tells the team. And during the last game, she's rooting for the Indians to win.
Oh my God.
So that was the first cut we did, because that's what we shot. So we previewed it, and the preview audiences hated the ending.
Uh-huh.
They were having so much fun hating her.
Right.
They didn't want to like her at the end. They wanted to see her get her comeuppance.
So you had to reshoot?
Yes.
Oh my God, I do not remember that.
What I had to do is I had to go to London for a weekend because Margaret Whitten was in a play in London, and she couldn't come back here to shoot. So we went to a studio in London. We built the whole box.
That lattice thing?
That lattice box.
Yeah.
That they had. And we went and we reshot the whole, her reactions to the last game, and had her in misery about
no way
the Indians winning. I hate this fucking song.
That's right. I did not realize that was a reshoot.
It was a reshoot, and we got like a 72 on our first preview. And then after we changed the ending, we got a 91.
That's crazy. That is crazy.
That's nuts.
That's crazy.
They just hated. They were having so much fun with this team, ripping the stuff off, the showgirl costume. And Margaret had done such a wonderful job of just, patting Serrano on the ass.
Yeah. Oh my God. She was such a good villain. She was such a good villain. She was great.
She was a great villain, and people were loving it. And they wanted this team to stick it to her at the end.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Because the whole movie had been about that. And then they felt like somehow the movie got taken away from them.
Right.
I was trying to be one step too clever.
You were being too nice. So I want to tell you, one of my great memories is, it was back in the day when your agent would call on Saturday or whatever, and you'd find out whether you won Friday night or not. And you were up against the dream team. Do you remember this?
Yes.
And you walked into our bedroom and you were like, we're number one. We're number one. We beat the dream team. And I'll never forget it, Dad. You had these slippers, you'd always walk around the house in these slippers. And it was the greatest moment. We were so psyched. The whole family was so psyched.
I was particularly psyched because when I went to the opening night of Cannery Row, I went to the theater.
Yes.
And there was nobody there. There were 12 people there. And I thought, oh my God, I don't even want to, I didn't want to go to the opening night of Major League because I didn't. I said, what if that happens again? I don't think I could take that again. And Joe Roth kidnapped me and actually took me there.
Is that right?
And he said, David, yes. He said, David, you're going to the theater with me.
Oh my God.
And we went, and people just,
That's amazing.
They loved it. They clapped. They did they laughed at the right times. And I was just like, oh my God.
Comes the throw. He slides. He is safe. The Indians win it. The Indians win it. Oh my God, the Indians win it.
So in wrapping up, this movie has so much relevance. It is the thing that people talk about maybe the most. They love it so much. They still watch it over and over again. It's something that's copied and echoed, and Ted Lasso, I'm sure, did a little bite off it. And, Why? Do you ever think about that? Like, why is it that it sort of has remained such a...
Yeah, because I think it's the ultimate kind of underdog story, and there have been a lot of underdog stories. I don't know why this would stick out more than others, other than that the characters are not stock. I will say that. I haven't seen many other characters that feel like that's very similar to Toronto, or that's similar to William H. Hayes or whatever. But I think the other thing is there are certain movies that every kid growing up, and it's not just boys now, it's girls. A lot of girls are playing baseball. Girls softball is a huge sport.
Yeah.
I think that every kid growing up who plays baseball watches the 3 or 4 well-known baseball movies. Bull Durham, Major League,
yeah,
Sandlot. I don't know if it's just Major League. Major League has had more, has been more quotable. I mean, it's been a staple of a lot of things people have said on ESPN over the years.
Yeah.
And that was fun. That was fun to see how it became part of the culture. And I think part of that was because of ESPN.
Yeah.
That a lot of people became aware of the movie that might not have seen it otherwise, who are interested in other sports, because sometimes their on-air personalities would quote from the movie.
Well, I just have to tell you, from my perspective, it was all of your greatest attributes and qualities and like areas of expertise. You know, like you were such a true sports fan. Watching games with you was always like an epic, rise and fall. It was just like, oh my God. And like you'd walk out of the room if someone and it was a true passion, and like you had so much knowledge. And so that was that. And then the music overlay, which was also obviously so important to you, and like the knowledge of these characters, and they all felt so authentic and nuanced. And you really thought about each one individually. And so to me, it's all the greatest, areas of expertise you brought into this like comedic film. And I just think that's part of the reason why it's like sustained, because it's like the very best of like all the things that you could offer. And so I love it so much. And I'm like, so happy you finally did this with me. I was like, ever since I started this podcast, I'm like, I got to get Dad on here. I got to do this. I got to do Major League. So was that easy, fun? Okay.
That was very fun. Yeah.
Well, we'll have to do another one, because I do feel like, there are so many movies, and the whole point of this podcast is like remembering the great films that we've made, and filmmaking is like just something that is important to keep alive, right?
Yes, it is.
And original filmmaking, it's not all about Marvel movies. So you're
I mean, it's a great tradition. I tell my students that. I say, you're not just doing something to make a living. You're becoming part of a great tradition, a great American cultural tradition that's now spread to the whole world. But you're just part of something really, really special.
The American Express card.
Don't steal home without it.
So guys, talk to me. That was my stepdad. It reminded me of being at the dinner table, just hearing him talk ad nauseum about whatever it was. And I was always so fascinated. Josh, you are our special guest. I'm so excited to have you on. You tell me first, like, what struck you about the story?
I guess I was wondering, like, starting to analyze, like, why do I still love it beyond being from Cleveland? And there are answers to that. They always say, like, write what you know. College screenwriting classes.
Where'd you go to college?
John Carroll University in University Heights,
And you took
Ohio.
screenwriting there?
I took one class on screenwriting.
Okay, yeah.
But they say that because you hit this like truth element, and then that translates.
Yes.
And he kind of like wrote what he knew in terms of baseball. Mm-hmm. And the one thing I don't get is how authentic it is in aspects that he didn't actually know about. The clubhouse, these players, like there is just this level of authenticity that the film hits where you're like, this is exactly how I think 70s and 80s baseball players acted.
Totally. Well, it's so funny you say that, because growing up in Santa Monica on 21st Street, and we had like very early cable, but we were always watching games. Then we were always watching the wrap up. And then he would spend his lunches reading Sports Illustrated. And my mom would always make fun of him because it was just like, sports was his passion. Like screenwriting was obviously his job and his passion, but sports was truly his passion. And so I would say, like, in terms of writing what you know, I feel like he did know more than the average bear because it was all consuming. You know, he didn't read the New York Times. He read like cover to cover Sports Illustrated when it would come in the mail. And so I do believe he really understood the like back office stuff, you know? And so that stuff obviously is a little bit invented, and he was a great researcher. Like that was one of his things that he was really, really good at. But I also believe he really lived it and grew up playing baseball. You know, like that was the American sport that he grew up in the 50s and 60s. Bex, what struck you about the episode? And you're a recent watcher of Major League, so I kind of want to hear your thoughts.
Yes. So on the opposite side of the spectrum as Josh, I had never seen the movie before this episode, and so watched it in preparation for it. And it was so good that I watched it again the next night.
Bex, that warms my heart so much. Was Tone with you, or was it you solo?
He was actually out both nights at the comedy club, but the second night he walked in when I was like halfway through it.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Oh, I love this movie." Like he didn't know I watched it the night before.
Yeah.
And he actually didn't even know I was watching it to prep for the podcast. He was a little bit confused. He was like, "I love this movie. Why are you watching this movie?" As if it would be very odd for me to watch a baseball movie by myself.
Oh my God.
There's a magic formula here where,
yes,
you know, sports obviously work really well on screen. Sports
underdog
movies,
stories for sure.
And then this crazy cast of funny characters.
Yeah.
And then there's this romance. And then there's this villain that you love to hate. Like all the elements work so well.
It checks every box of like the A, B, and C narrative that you want to see. It's like a story of camaraderie. You have those like that sort of wingman story. I loved seeing Charlie Sheen and Wesley Snipes together. I love seeing Tom Berenger sort of mentor those guys. I loved the romance. Rene Russo was so good with Berenger. The villain was so great. I didn't know that like they had to go reshoot the end. Like I really did not know that part of the story.
I'd be curious, Josh, what did you think about that tidbit? Like, would you have liked the movie as much if she hadn't gotten her comeuppance in the end?
No, I kind of agree with what he said in that he was like maybe trying to be a little bit too clever. Mm-hmm, like you want her to get her comeuppance for sure at the end. And yeah, I don't think you could like land that plane the same way. And
totally.
To know that her in the box there saying, you know, I hate this song as a reshoot is like
so genius.
Amazing, yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
And you know, it's so funny, like this movie does travel a little bit. My sister was having a dinner party and Matthew Rhys, you know, that actor from The Americans, I happened to be seated next to him and we were talking and he just started quoting Major League. Like, I was like, Matthew Rhys, you're just like this elegant, elevated English actor. And you know, like, fuck you, Joe Boo. Like, you know those lines. It's so crazy. So it's so nice to hear when people like love a movie as much as this. All right, guys. Well, another amazing, great episode. I loved walking down memory lane with my dad. Loyal listeners, you're amazing for going along the journey. And Bexy, you do the wrap up.
Okay. Well, Josh, it was great to have you on this episode. I would love to do more. It was very fun.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Josh, you're the best. I also want to hear like Josh's impressions of us. I wanted to like interview Josh about editing our episodes. Give us the scoop, Josh. How hard is it?
It's actually, you guys make it really simple. It's you
Come on,
guys
Josh.
really know your stuff. No, seriously. It's not even work. Like this is
oh my God.
Kind of like the best gig ever, just sitting here listening to you guys talk about movies. As a movie lover, it's great.
That was very nice, Josh. You're gonna make me cry. If there's one thing Danielle and I are not shy about, the number of times that she and I have just teared up together over
good God, man.
over things that we get very emotional about.
12 years of that. The most recent being the Heart of the Beast announcement.
Oh my gosh. Don't even.
Oh my God. I don't know if this should be in or not, but this was a movie we were going to produce that like slipped through our fingers, and now it's being directed by David Ayer and produced by Damien Chazelle, and it's our dream project. And Good for them.
We had it.
Good for them. We just wish them well.
I wish them well.
Yep.
Very, very well. But it's still heartbreaking. That
Yeah.
announcement came through and I was heartbroken. But,
man.
we
Dagger through the
learn
heart.
and we move on. And
Yep, that's right.
Stay gold.
Stay gold,
Stay gold.
Josh. All right, guys.
Thank you for listening as always. Please remember to like and subscribe. Follow us at Stay Gold Features on Instagram. DM us with any suggestions for movies or producers you want us to interview. Don't forget to visit our merch shop
at staygoldfeatures.com. So easy, guys.
Buy merch and remember to stay gold.
Stay gold.
Stay gold.